The night was still young, but the city outside was already half asleep. Neon lights flickered across rain-soaked streets, and cars passed in a lazy rhythm, like heartbeats slowing after a long day. Inside a sleek black Mercedes, Derek Owusu rubbed his temples, exhaustion hanging heavy beneath his eyes. He had been in meetings all day, sealed behind glass walls where numbers danced on screens and voices argued over profit margins. By the time he glanced at his wristwatch, it was already past 10 p.m. "Home," he muttered to his driver, voice low and distant. The car hummed forward through the drizzle. From the outside, Derek was everything a man was supposed to be. A successful architect, a husband, a father, a man whose name opened doors. But lately the walls he'd built around himself were beginning to crack. His marriage had grown quiet. His wife, Irene, no longer smiled the way she used to. And his 10-year-old son, Ryan, had started avoiding him altogether. Derek told himself it was just a phase. Children changed, families drifted, then found their way back. That's what he believed. Until that one night. As the Mercedes pulled into the driveway of their luxurious home, the lights inside were dim. Except one faint glow from the hallway. Derek grabbed his briefcase and walked in. The scent of lavender and floor polish mixed with something else. Unease. Then came a soft voice. "Good evening, sir." It was Mara, their maid. She stood near the kitchen door, her uniform crisp, her hands clasped nervously. Derek nodded, distracted. "Evening, Mara. Everyone asleep?" She hesitated, just long enough for him to notice. "Madam went upstairs an hour ago, but—" He looked up. "But what?" Her eyes darted to the staircase, then back to him. "It's about Master Ryan." Derek's grip on his briefcase tightened. "What about him?" Mara swallowed. "Sir, I think you should talk to him. Something's not right." He frowned. "Not right how?" She looked away. "He's been asking strange questions. About family. About secrets." Derek sighed, tired. "Kids get curious, Mara. Don't overthink it." But Mara's voice grew quieter. "He said something tonight that scared me, sir. He said, 'Dad's not really my dad.'" The briefcase slipped from Derek's hand, hitting the floor with a thud. For a long moment, he didn't move. The air felt heavier, thicker, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. "What did you say?" His voice was barely above a whisper. Mara stepped back slightly, startled by the change in his tone. "I didn't want to upset you, sir, but he sounded so sure. He said he heard Madam and someone else talking once. He didn't say who." Derek's jaw clenched. Every part of him wanted to dismiss it, to call it childish nonsense. But the way Mara spoke, the tremor in her voice, told him this wasn't gossip. This was something deeper. He turned toward the stairs, pulse pounding. "Where is he?" "In his room, sir, but he's asleep." Derek hesitated. The old clock in the hallway ticked loudly, echoing like a heartbeat. He wanted to storm upstairs, wake the boy, demand answers, but another part of him, the rational, cautious side, told him to wait. He forced a smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you, Mara. You can go rest." "Yes, sir." She bowed slightly and disappeared into the servants' quarters. As her footsteps faded, Derek stood in the quiet hallway, staring at the staircase. The lavender scent had turned cold somehow, sterile, like a hospital corridor after bad news. He walked slowly up the stairs, each step heavier than the last. When he reached Ryan's door, he paused. The door was half open. Inside, the soft glow of a nightlight bathed the boy's face in orange. Ryan was asleep, one arm wrapped around his favorite toy car. He looked peaceful, innocent, and yet those words, "Dad's not really my dad," echoed in Derek's mind like thunder. He walked closer, crouched beside the bed, and brushed a strand of hair from the boy's forehead. For a second, he saw himself in that face, the same jawline, the same dimple that appeared when he smiled. But now even that resemblance felt like a question mark. Downstairs, the clock struck 11. He turned and left the room quietly, shutting the door behind him. The next morning, the sun rose bright and merciless. Derek barely slept. Irene was already at the table, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. She looked perfect, as always. Smooth hair, flawless nails, a faint smile painted across her lips. "Morning," she said casually. not looking up. Morning. He sat opposite her, every nerve in his body tight. For a few seconds, silence hung between them, the kind that wasn't peaceful, just heavy. Finally, he spoke. I talked to Mara last night. Her eyes flicked up. About what? About Ryan. Her smile faltered. What about him? She said he's been confused, asking questions about family, about secrets. The spoon in her hand clinked against the cup. He's 10, Derek. Kids say strange things all the time. He leaned forward. He said I'm not his father. The color drained from her face. The spoon slipped from her fingers, hitting the saucer with a sharp sound that filled the room. What did you just say? She whispered. You heard me. His voice was calm, but his hands trembled slightly beneath the table. He said I'm not his father. Now tell me, why would he say that? Irene stared at him, eyes wide, breath uneven. Then she stood abruptly. I need to get ready for work. He stood too. Don't walk away from me, Irene. Derek, please. Her voice cracked, part fear, part guilt. Not now. Then when? He snapped. When our son stops calling me Dad? When I find out from someone else that you… He stopped himself. The silence that followed was deafening. Irene's eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. Instead, she turned and walked out, the click of her heels echoing down the hall. Derek stood frozen, his chest tight, his world tilting slightly off balance. That day at work, he couldn't focus. Every conversation blurred, every face looked distant. All he could hear was Ryan's innocent voice, the one he hadn't even heard firsthand, whispering, Dad's not really my dad. He thought about confronting Irene again. He thought about calling Mara back, pressing her for details. But deep down, he knew this wasn't just about what the boy said. It was about what Irene wasn't saying. And that was what scared him the most. As the sun dipped below the skyline that evening, Derek made a decision, one that would change everything. He wasn't going to wait for answers anymore. He was going to find them himself. The night came faster than usual. The sky outside Derek's office was painted in shades of dying orange and heavy grey. The kind of sky that promised a storm. He sat at his desk, staring at a set of blueprints he hadn't touched for hours. Lines blurred, numbers meant nothing. His phone buzzed, a message from Irene. Ryan's at his cousin's for the night, don't wait up. No love you, no be safe, just distance, cold and deliberate. Derek leaned back in his chair, the quiet hum of the office amplifying his thoughts. For years, he had believed he knew his family inside out, their laughter, their rhythms, their unspoken rules. But now everything felt foreign. He thought of Mara's trembling voice, Ryan's innocent words, Irene's panicked silence, and somewhere beneath the anger and confusion, a darker feeling began to grow. Fear. Fear that the life he'd built was built on someone else's truth. He grabbed his keys. Tonight he wasn't just going home, he was going digging. When he arrived, the house was too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't comfort, it warns. He walked through the living room, noticing small things he had never paid attention to before. A faint perfume that wasn't Irene's usual scent, a half-empty wine glass on the counter, and a torn envelope near the trash bin. He picked it up. The return address was smudged, but one word stood out. Clinic. He frowned, heart pounding as he unfolded the paper inside. It was a DNA test request form. His name wasn't on it, but Irene's was, and next to hers, Ryan's. The date on the form was from 2 months ago. Derek felt the ground shift beneath him. He clutched the paper tighter, his breath coming faster. Every question he'd been holding back crashed through his mind at once. Why would Irene do a DNA test behind his back? What had she found out? And why hadn't she told him? He heard footsteps, soft, careful ones. Mara appeared at the kitchen door again, her expression cautious. Sir, he looked up sharply. How long have you been working here, Mara? 3 years, sir. You've seen a lot in this house, haven't you? She hesitated. I just do my job, sir. Derek walked toward her, the paper trembling slightly in his hand. Then do your job now. And tell me the truth. She looked at the form and went pale. Sir, I didn't mean for you to find that… So it's true, his voice cracked like thunder. She really did this. Mara's lips parted, but no words came out. She looked terrified, not of Derek, but of something else. "Please, sir," she whispered. "You shouldn't be angry at Madame. There's more to this than you know." Derek's chest tightened. "Then tell me. Because right now, my son thinks I'm not his father, my wife is lying to me, and I'm standing in my own home feeling like a stranger. So please, Mara, tell me what's going on." She swallowed hard, tears glinting in her eyes. "Madam didn't do that test because of you," she said softly. "She did it because someone told her to." "Someone?" Derek's eyes narrowed. "Who?" Mara shook her head. "I don't know who he is, but he's been calling Madam for weeks now. Every time she answers, she goes pale. Sometimes she cries after. Once I overheard her say, 'I'll do whatever you want, just don't tell him.'" The words hit Derek like a blow. He staggered back, gripping the counter for balance. "Don't tell who?" he whispered, though he already knew the answer. "You, sir," Mara said quietly. The storm outside finally broke, thunder rattling the windows as rain poured down. Derek stood there, drenched in confusion and disbelief. Someone was blackmailing his wife. And somehow it involved his son. He didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study, the form lying on the desk like a confession. Every creak of the house made him tense. At one point, he opened his laptop and searched for the clinic's name. It was real. A small paternity testing center across town. He called the number, no answer. He sent an email, no reply. By 3 a.m., his thoughts had turned to obsession. What if this wasn't just a misunderstanding? What if Irene had done the test because there was a reason to doubt Ryan's paternity? By morning, he decided he was going to that clinic. The next day was grey again, the world matching his mood. He parked outside the clinic, a modest building with frosted glass doors and the faint smell of disinfectant. Inside, the receptionist smiled politely. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" "I'm looking for information on a paternity test," he said, trying to sound calm. "It was requested 2 months ago. The names are Irene Owusu and Ryan Owusu." The woman typed something into her computer. Her polite smile faded slightly. "I'm sorry, sir, but those records are confidential. Only the requesting party can access them." He leaned closer. "I'm her husband. I understand, sir, but without her written consent, I can't." He slid his business card across the desk. "Please, this is important." She hesitated, then glanced around. "Wait here." Minutes later, she returned, holding a sealed envelope. "This was left for Mrs. Owusu to collect, but she hasn't come back. I shouldn't be doing this." Derek took it, his hands trembling. "Thank you." Outside, he sat in his car, rain splattering across the windshield. He stared at the envelope like it might explode. Then he opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The results. His eyes scanned the words until they found the line that mattered most. Probability of paternity, 0%. His breath caught in his throat. For a long time, the world went silent. Even the rain seemed to stop. Then he laughed, a bitter, broken sound. "No," he whispered, "that's not possible." He read it again and again. Each time the same words stared back, cold and unfeeling. His son, the boy he'd raised, loved, carried on his shoulders, wasn't his. He didn't remember driving home. He didn't remember walking inside. But suddenly he was standing in the living room, the envelope crushed in his hand, the paper crumpled and damp from the rain. Irene was there, startled as he burst in. "Derek, what's going on?" He threw the paper at her. "You tell me." She froze, eyes darting to the document. Her lips trembled. "Derek, I can explain." "Explain?" His voice was sharp, hoarse. "Explain how you lied to me for 10 years, how you let me raise a child that isn't mine." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Please, it's not what you think." "Then what is it?" he shouted. "Because according to this, Ryan isn't my son." She took a step forward, desperate. "Derek, I swear, I didn't know." He laughed bitterly. Didn't know? How do you not know who fathered your child?" Irene broke down, sobbing. Because someone told me I had to test him. Someone said if I didn't, they'd destroy you." "Destroy me?" Derek's voice softened just a little. "Who?" She looked terrified, like speaking the name would summon a ghost. "I don't know. They called from different numbers. They said you did something years ago, something terrible, and they could prove it. They said Ryan wasn't yours and that I needed to confirm it, or what? Or they'd ruin our family. Derek stepped back, his anger now mixed with confusion. This wasn't adding up. Why would someone do this? He whispered. Irene shook her head, trembling. I don't know, but I think it has something to do with your past, your company, something you tried to hide. The words cut deep. Derek's mind flashed back to a deal he'd made years ago, one that wasn't exactly clean. Someone had taken the fall for it, someone who'd sworn revenge. And suddenly it made sense. Someone was coming after him, through his family. He turned away, gripping his head. God, what have I done? Behind him, Irene sobbed quietly. The sound filled the room like a haunting melody. Love, regret, and fear all tangled together. The storm outside began to fade, but inside the damage had already been done. Derek walked out of the room without another word. He needed the truth, all of it. And the next person he was going to see was Mara. The morning after the storm smelled like wet dust and broken peace. The house stood silent, like it was holding its breath. Irene hadn't left the bedroom. She'd locked herself in after the argument. Derek hadn't slept either, just sat in his study, staring at the crumpled test result on the desk, his reflection ghosting off the window glass. He kept replaying her words. Someone said they'd destroy you, something from your past. Derek didn't need to think hard to know what that something was. Years ago, before the company had grown, before the luxury cars and press interviews, there had been a deal. A risky one, a mistake covered up by money and manipulation, a name erased from the books. And that name had haunted him ever since. The man who'd taken the fall, his former business partner, Jonas Mensah. Jonas had gone to prison, Derek hadn't. And now, maybe he was back. Derek's pulse raced. He stood abruptly, grabbed his coat, and strode toward the kitchen. Mara was there, wiping the counter, her hands moving slower than usual, like she knew what was coming. He stopped by the doorway. Sit down, he said quietly. She froze, then obeyed. Derek placed the folded paper on the table between them. You knew about this before I did, didn't you? Her eyes flickered toward it, then away. Yes, sir. How long? Since the day Madame brought it home. She told me not to say anything. And you listened. I was protecting her, Mara said, her voice shaking. And you? Derek leaned forward. Protecting me from what? Mara hesitated, her lips pressed tight, as if weighing whether the truth was worth the risk. Then she whispered, from the man who's been calling. Derek's eyes darkened. You know who it is, don't you? She didn't speak for a long moment, then softly, his name is Jonas. The sound of that name hit Derek like a punch. He gripped the edge of the table to steady himself. Jonas? Jonas is dead. He died in prison. Mara's gaze lifted slowly. No, sir, he didn't. Silence, heavy, suffocating. Derek felt his throat tighten. How do you know that? Mara clasped her trembling hands together. Because he came here. Derek froze. He what? 3 weeks ago, she said, tears glinting in her eyes. It was late, almost midnight. I thought he was just a stranger at first, until he said your name. He told me to tell Madame that if she wanted her perfect life to stay perfect, she'd do what he said. He gave her a number, said she'd better answer when he called. Derek's pulse thundered in his ears. And you didn't call the police? He said he'd hurt Ryan if we did, Mara whispered. He showed me a picture, your son leaving school. He knew everything, sir. What time the driver came, where Madame shopped, even the color of your car. Derek sank back in the chair, his hands shaking. Jonas was alive. And he wanted revenge. But what kind of man drags a child into vengeance? Hours later, Derek drove through the city, his mind spinning with anger, fear, and disbelief. He replayed every choice he'd made in his life, every shortcut, every lie. Somewhere, somehow, his past had come back, and this time it wasn't just his business at stake. It was his family. He parked outside a rundown motel on the edge of town, a place he hadn't seen in nearly a decade. Jonas's old hideout before the arrest. The sign flickered weakly in the rain. Inside, the air was stale, a mixture of cigarette smoke and mildew. Derek asked the manager if a man named Jonas had stayed there recently. The man shrugged. "People don't use real names here, boss." But then a voice came from behind him. "I was wondering when you'd come." Derek turned. Jonas stood there, older, thinner, his hair streaked with grey. But his eyes, they were the same, cold, calculating. Jonas. Derek. The two men stared at each other, 10 years of silence between them. Derek spoke first. "You faked your death." Jonas smiled faintly. "Death is expensive, but revenge, that's priceless." "What do you want?" "What's owed to me," Jonas said simply. "Everything you took, my life, my reputation, my future." "I didn't take anything," Derek snapped. "You made your own choices." Jonas's smile faded. "You signed my name on those contracts. You framed me to save yourself." "That was business." "That," Jonas hissed, stepping closer, "was betrayal." Derek clenched his fists. "So this is how you make it right? By blackmailing my wife? By terrorizing my son?" Jonas's expression twisted with bitterness. "You took my child's future. Now I'm taking yours." Derek's stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" Jonas leaned in, his voice low. "You really think Ryan isn't your son?" Derek froze. "The test said—" "I know what it said, because I made sure of it." "What do you mean?" Jonas smirked. "Let's just say a little money can make any lab technician tell the story you want." Derek's heart pounded. "You faked the results?" Jonas nodded slowly. "You deserve to feel what I felt. Doubt, shame, destruction. I wanted you to watch your perfect family crumble the way mine did." Derek's voice dropped to a whisper. "You ruined a child's life for revenge." Jonas's eyes darkened. "And you ruined a man's for greed. Seems fair." They stood there, two broken men, each reflecting what the other had become. Derek didn't remember leaving. He just remembered the rain. Cold, relentless, washing down his face like punishment. He drove aimlessly for hours before ending up at the only place that mattered. Ryan's school. It was after hours, but he parked by the gate anyway. The field was empty, the swings creaking softly in the wind. For a long time, he just sat there, watching the rain fall, thinking about the boy who called him Dad. The boy who might still be his, despite everything. He pulled out his phone and dialed Mara. She answered on the first ring. "Sir?" "Get Irene," he said quietly. "Both of you meet me at the hospital. I'm doing another test. A real one." Mara hesitated. "Sir, are you sure?" Derek's voice hardened. "I'm done with secrets. I want the truth, once and for all." 2 hours later, they sat in the clinic waiting room. Irene's eyes were red from crying. Ryan, sleepy and confused, leaned against her shoulder. When the nurse called their name, Derek stood first. He took Ryan's hand, small, warm, trusting, and for the first time in weeks, he smiled. "Hey, champ," he said softly. "We're just going to do a quick test, okay?" "Nothing scary." Ryan nodded. "Okay, Daddy." The word hit Derek like light through clouds. After the samples were taken, the nurse said it would take a few days for the results. Derek thanked her, but his mind was far from calm. As they walked out, Irene touched his arm. "Derek, I'm so sorry." He didn't answer right away. "If Jonas wanted to destroy me, he already did, but I won't let him destroy Ryan." Tears filled her eyes. "Do you really think he's your son?" He looked at her, his voice steady. "No matter what that paper says, he's mine." That night, the house felt different, lighter somehow. Derek tucked Ryan into bed, brushed his hair aside, and whispered, "You're safe now, buddy." Mara stood by the door, watching quietly. "Sir," she said softly, "you did the right thing." Derek nodded. "Maybe, but I still need to make this right." She hesitated. "Jonas won't stop." He turned to her. "Then I'll stop him." Mara looked uneasy. "He's dangerous, sir." "So am I," Derek replied coldly. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, Derek sat in his study again. He opened his laptop and began typing an email, a confession. Everything he'd done, every lie, every name. He attached the old documents Jonas had used as leverage and addressed it to the company board and the authorities. He read it twice before hitting send. If Jonas wanted destruction, Derek would give him truth instead. He leaned back, exhaling. For the first time in years, he felt lighter. Then his phone buzzed. A message. You think you can undo what you did? You took my life. Now I'll take yours. It was from an unknown number. Jonas. Derek stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. Come and try. He turned off the phone and walked to Ryan's room. He stood there quietly, watching his son sleep. The boy stirred slightly, mumbling in his dreams. Derek smiled faintly. No one's taking you from me, he whispered. Outside, thunder rolled again, distant but coming closer. The night returned with thunder, not the soft passing kind, but the kind that warned something was coming. The house stood quiet again. Too quiet. Mara had put Ryan to bed early. Irene sat in the living room, her eyes lost somewhere beyond the rain. Derek was in his study, staring at the last email he'd ever sent, the one that could either save him or destroy him completely. He leaned back in his chair, exhaustion pulling at his bones. For the first time, he wasn't afraid of the truth anymore. Then, a faint sound. A creak at the back door. Derek froze. He stood slowly, his hand moving to the drawer where he kept a small pistol. He'd never used it, not even known why he bought it, until now. The creak came again, followed by the soft shuffle of footsteps. Mara, he called. No answer. He stepped into the hallway, every nerve on edge. The lights flickered once, twice, and then went out completely. Damn it! He grabbed his phone, the flashlight cutting through the darkness. The beam caught something, muddy footprints on the marble floor leading toward the living room. And there, by the window, stood a figure, Jonas, drenched, shivering, and smiling. "Miss me?" he said, his voice low and rough. Derek raised the gun. "You shouldn't be here." Jonas took a slow step forward. "Neither should you, Derek. Not in that suit, not in this house, not in that little boy's life. You built this on my bones." "I made mistakes," Derek said, his voice trembling but firm. "I'm trying to fix them." Jonas laughed, a cold, broken sound. "Fix them? You sent me to rot in a cell while you signed million-dollar deals. My wife left. My son overdosed. You fixed nothing." "I'm sorry," Derek said quietly. "You were my brother once." Jonas's expression cracked for a split second, pain flickering through the rage. "Then why did you destroy me?" Derek lowered the gun slightly. "Because I was weak. I thought success could bury the guilt, but it didn't. It only buried me deeper." For a moment, the storm outside filled the silence. Then, a voice broke it. "Dad?" They both turned. Ryan stood on the staircase in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. Behind him, Mara froze, horror spreading across her face. "Ryan, go back upstairs," Derek said firmly, but Jonas moved first. He reached into his coat, pulling out a small pistol of his own. "Don't move," Mara gasped. "Jonas, please." He turned the gun on her. "Don't you dare say my name like you know me." But she did, because Mara did know him. She stepped forward slowly, her voice trembling. "Jonas, stop. This isn't who you are." Derek's eyes darted to her. "What are you talking about?" Jonas's hands shook now, the weapon wavering. "Don't. Tell him," Mara whispered, tears spilling. "Tell him the truth." Derek's heart hammered. "What truth?" Mara looked at him, then at Ryan. "I wasn't just your maid, sir. I was Jonas's sister." The room froze. Jonas's jaw tightened. "Mara, stop." "No," she said, her voice breaking. "I should have told you both a long time ago. I came here after the trial to watch you, to understand how you could destroy someone who once trusted you. But I saw your son. I saw how you loved him. I saw the man you were trying to become. I couldn't hate you anymore." Jonas's face twisted in anguish. "You betrayed me. For him. I wanted to save you both," she cried. "You from vengeance, him from guilt." Derek's mind reeled. All those years, all those quiet moments, the woman who'd raised his son's first steps and wiped his tears. She'd been keeping her own grief hidden beneath her uniform. Jonas turned toward Derek, his expression hollow. "You don't deserve forgiveness." "Maybe not," Derek said, "but my son does." Jonas hesitated, his hand trembling on the gun. Lightning flashed. For a moment, his eyes softened. Then a sound cut through the room, a small voice. "Please don't hurt my dad." Ryan stood at the bottom of the stairs now, clutching a stuffed toy. Tears glistened on his cheeks. Jonas's lip quivered. "Go back upstairs, kid." Ryan shook his head. "Mom says everyone can change." Something inside Jonas broke. The gun lowered slightly, his shoulders slumped. But before he could speak, sirens wailed outside. Mara had called the police. Jonas looked around, panic flooding his face. "You called them?" "I had to," she whispered. "You need help." Jonas's breath quickened. He looked at Derek, then at Ryan. "You don't get to walk away clean." He raised the gun again, but before he could pull the trigger, Derek lunged forward. The two men crashed into each other, the gun skidding across the floor. A shot rang out, screams, then silence. When the lights flickered back on, Mara was kneeling beside Derek, his arm bleeding but alive. Jonas lay a few feet away, groaning, clutching his side. The bullet had grazed him. The front door burst open, police shouting, flashlights slicing through the dark. Jonas didn't fight. He just sat there, staring at Derek. "You ruined me, and still, you saved me." Derek, wincing, whispered, "No one deserves to die for my mistakes." Jonas looked toward Ryan. "You've got a good father, kid." And for the first time in years, he smiled. The officers led him away in handcuffs. Rain poured down harder outside, washing the blood from the steps. Days later, the hospital room smelled like antiseptic and second chances. Derek sat on the bed, his arm bandaged, watching Ryan draw superheroes on a notepad. Irene sat beside him, holding his hand. The test results lay unopened on the table. Mara walked in quietly, carrying flowers. "How are you feeling?" "Better," Derek said, "physically at least." She nodded. "They transferred Jonas to the medical ward. He's stable. He asked about you." Derek looked surprised. "What did he say?" Mara smiled faintly. "He said to tell you the truth this time." Derek stared at the envelope. His hand trembled as he picked it up. Irene leaned forward. "Are you ready?" He nodded. "Whatever it says, we face it together." He tore it open slowly and froze. Then he smiled. Ryan was his son. Tears filled his eyes as he pulled the boy into his arms. "You hear that, champ? You're really mine." Ryan giggled. "I told you, Daddy." Irene pressed her hand over her mouth, sobbing quietly. Mara turned away, wiping her eyes. For the first time in what felt like forever, the House of Lies had finally become a home of truth. Months later, the garden was blooming again. Derek stood by the swing set, watching Ryan laugh as Irene pushed him. Mara sat on the porch, sipping tea, a soft smile on her face. The scars were still there, emotional, physical, but something stronger had replaced the pain. Peace. Derek joined Mara on the porch. "He's growing fast," he said. She nodded. "Kids always do when you start noticing." He looked at her. "Thank you. For everything. For protecting him. For saving me." Mara smiled faintly. "Maybe we all saved each other." He exhaled, eyes distant. "Do you think Jonas will ever forgive me?" "Maybe not," she said. "But I think he's learning how to forgive himself." Derek nodded slowly, looking at the horizon, where sunlight finally broke through the clouds. He smiled. "Then maybe we all get a second chance. In the end, truth doesn't destroy, it cleanses. Sometimes the storms we fear most are the ones that wash away everything fake and reveal what was real all along."